Welcome into our new lecture. So in today's lecture we are going to study about what are static methods. So we are going to see that what are static methods and how can we create them and what is the use of static method. So let me just take a simple function here, simple class. I am going to create a class here, class learn, and then inside this class I am going to define a function. So define function using def keyword, and then I'm going to give the name of my function. So my function name is student details, and then inside it I'm going to use self to bind our function with the class, and then I'm going to take some parameter there, like I'm going to take the name and the email and number. Now these are the parameters which are passing in our function. So what I am going to do, I am going to just print this, and in this print statement what I want to print the name and the email and mobile number. So let me just take number, number. So earlier we just misspelled it. Now here we had created a simple function here inside our class and binded it using self keyword. Now let me just run it, and now if we want to access our function from this class, so how can we access it? We have to create the object of our class. So let me just create object of class using name. So this is our object name. So this is learn dot. So let me just take learn, and now I'm going to create object of our class. So our class object name is code. Now the code is the object of this learn class. And how can we access the function inside our class? So we are going to call the object here. So code dot, and we can see that we are getting student details function here, and inside this we are going to pass name here. So I'm going to pass my name here, and then the email. So let me just take email, and the number. So this is just number. So you can see that it just printed this statement for us, like the simple function with the print statement. So it printed all the values for the arguments which we passed here. Now let us take this function again and let us create some static functions there. So I'm just going to take this function and I want to create a static function. So how can we create? We have to define a function another. So this is a function like teacher. So list that the teacher list which are teaching here. So how can we make this as a static method? So simply we have to use an annotation at the start of our function using @static method. Now this function becomes a static method. So if what is the like why do we need to create a static method? So we need to create a static method because if we don't want to create object of our class, we just want to call our function with the name of our class. Here earlier we had to create object of our class, but instead of creating object of our class, we have to just call it by the name of our class, that learn dot and then the name of our function. So let me just pass the arguments here, like list dash teacher colon, and then what we want to print the list of teachers. So list dash teacher. Now this function is converted into a static method. So let us see that how can we initialize this static method. Sorry, we had already initialized it. How can we call it? So we have to just call the name of class. Our class name is learn here, and learn dot. You can see that we are going to get the static method here. So what is the method here? We have teacher dash list, and in this list we are going to pass our list of teachers, like I'm going to take my name and then another name, like so these are the names, and now it will print these names for us. So basically why we need to create static methods? So static methods are just used to avoid creating class objects. We can simply call them with the name of our class. And also static methods are used to create utilities in our Python programs. Like utilities are those files which are used to create links with different files, and if we want to like repeat our functions, so then we don't have to create multiple instances of our function. We have to just call our function and then we can pass the values inside our static method. So basically what is the main purpose of creating static method? So let us see that this is our simple function which contains student details. So how can we call it? We have to create the object of our class, and then we have to create instance, and then we have to call it. So basically this static method prevents creating instances, but whenever we will create object for this class, then this function will invoke and it will create copies for this function. Like let me just take here, so I am going to take student1 is equal to, so I am taking my learn function here, learn class, sorry, and then student1 student one dot student dash details. So now this whatever value we will pass into this function, these values will not be accessible to the next object which we will create for this class. Like if we have multiple students, then we have to create multiple objects for different students, and then we have to call them by creating the object of our class. So now it is creating multiple copies of student class for us for each object which we are going to create for our class. So this is increasing the memory usage, and it is creating a lot of extra functions. But what if like if each student has different phone number details, it does not matter. But if we have teachers list, so in a class there, like if there are thousands of students, but there will be limited teachers, so we cannot create multiple instances of teachers here. Like we have to just define a static method so that this function would be accessible to all the objects, like for student 1 student 2 as well, without creating the object. But if we just take a simple function here, like I'm going to take a def keyword and then mentor, and this mentor function we are going to just pass the teacher, so and then print, and inside it I am going to print the teacher. So now this is our simple function. So whenever we will going to create object or class, then there would be a separate copy created for each mentor. But we have only limited mentors for each class, like we have mostly 2 or 3 or mainly 5 mentors for each class. But we cannot create multiple functions at each call of the at the creation of the object. So to reduce this effort, we have to create static method so that we can reduce our memory usage, and our program could work more effectively and more concisely. So let us see another thing, like how can we use our static method inside our class method. So let me take a class learn1 and let me create a class method here. So in last lecture we studied about class method, so we are going to define it like class dash name, and then we are going to use CLS to link our class with the our function with the class. And then what we want, I'm going to create a static like class method, so at the rate of class method, and then I'm going to bind this function with our this function. So how can we do it? We are going to use CLS dot, and then what is the name of our function? Our static method name is teacher dash list. So now I'm going to run it, and I'm going to just, and how can we call it? We have to call class method by the name of our class, and learn1 dot class dash name, and let me just call it. You can see that we are going to get an error. So what error we are getting? We are getting the error that missing one required positional argument list teacher. So basically here we had passed our student teacher list, our list here, so we have to pass the list earlier here. So I'm going to just pass the list here, and then let me just run it again, and let me just execute it again. So now you can see that we are directly passing the values for our static method into our class method. So now we can get a basic understanding of that. Static methods are those methods which we don't need to create again and again, because these are static. So we have to just define them once, and then we can call it wherever it is needed. So now let us see that how can we call a static method inside our static method. So let me just copy our previous code here, and let me just change the name of our function, and then let me define another static function here. So this time I'm going to define another function, and teacher dash email. So this is our static method name, and inside this we want email dash teacher, and then colon, and then what we want to print email dash teacher. Now we have to convert it into a static method, so let us just use the annotation of static method. Now our this function is converted into a static method, and if we want to call this static method inside our this static method, so we have, how can we call, we have to call it by the name of our class, because this static method is the part of our learn class 2. So we have to call our learn 2 dot, and then what we have to call, the name of function is email dash teacher. So we have to call it, so teacher dash email, and then inside the email we have to pass the email. So we have to pass a list, or we can pass a single email as well. So let me just take a list here, so comma, and then so now we can see that it executed successfully, and let me just call it. So how can we call static method? By the name of class. So let me just call the name here, and then in which static method we have passed our email in teacher dash list. So let me just call this static method teacher dash list, and this list we have to in this teacher dash list static method we have to pass the list. So let me just pass the list here of our mentor. So I'm going to pass the mentor list, and then so let me just run it. We can see that we are getting both the values. For first static method we are getting printed the email IDs, and for second static method the list of mentors which we had passed, the teachers we have passed here. So here we can see that how can we pass a static method inside our class, static method inside a static method, and a class method inside a static method as well. Now let us see that how can we call our static method inside our simple function. So how can we call it? So let me just here we have to use self to link this function with the class, and then we are going to use self keyword, self dot, and then the name of our static class. So I'm going to copy this like teacher list, and I'm going to pass it here. So this is our static list, and then here we have to pass the list. So let me just pass the list here like teacher list. So and then let me just pass list here. So now let me just execute it again, and so this is our simple function. So we can access it using the by creating the object of our class. So we have to create the object of our class. So I'm going to take code, and then what is the name of class? Learn to. So code 1 is equal to learn 2. Now we had created object of our class, and then how can we call it? So we have to just call the name of our object. So our object name is code 1, then dot, and then we have to call the mentor here. So now let me just run it. We can see that we are getting error, missing argument. So basically we have to pass the teacher list here, which we want to print here. So let me just pass the list of teacher here, like going to pass the list here, and then let me just execute it again. Now you can see that we are getting printed all those properties which we had called inside each other. So now first it will print this, like our this method print, then it will print the self dot teacher list, this list. And when we go back to our teacher dash list, we can see that we are calling this teacher email inside our teacher dash list function static method, so it is also going to print that as well. So here today's lecture we had seen that how can we call static method inside a static method, class method, and inside a class method how can we call a static method, and in a simple method how can we call our static method as well. So that's it for today. Please try to practice around it and spend more time around these functions, and that's it for today. See you in next lecture. Bye.